He's Howard Eibach, a former copywriter and creative director and the author of 2 books on the creative brief.
And he's Henry Gomez, an ad agency strategist with 25 years of experience. And together, we're the Brief Brothers, having an ongoing conversation about creative briefs, briefing, and advertising. We're back, Henry, and I think this is going to be the last episode of the year, or is it the first episode of the new year? I forget. I think it's the first episode of the new year. Yeah. So Happy New Year to all of our Brief Brother fans. So today, all 2 of them, you and me and our families. I thought would be an interesting topic of discussion today, something that is related to what I think a lot of people in our industry know is true about advertising in general, and that is humor sells. But we always talk about humor in terms of the creative, great TV ideas, print, everything, but we don't talk about it a lot, I think, in terms of writing a brief. Where does humor play out in terms of how we write a brief? And I've got examples of briefs in my books that I think are really good at demonstrating how having a sense of humor can help the creatives. And I'm just going to read just one as an example. It's one of my favorite that I love to read, and I always get a chuckle from it. It's from a brief written by Leo Burnett. It's for a product we all know called Vicks NyQuil. And it's to answer the question, who are we talking to? And if I think about it, I might have actually read this in a previous episode under different context. But listen to what this brief writer did to answer the question, who are we talking to, about Vicks NyQuil. Cold sufferers, you know how you feel when you've got a cold. That pathetic little inner child of yours suddenly wakes up, and before you know it, you're moaning and whining. You've gone all whiny and wimpy, all snivel, snot, and slovenly, red, raw, puffy eyes, pale skin, lank hair. Everything seems to be sagging. You feel like something from a Salvador Dali painting, and you want to snuggle up in bed, and damn it, you want your mummy. But it's not fair, is it? Because no one else takes your suffering seriously. Good God, pull yourself together, man. We're not talking leprosy here. Don't be such a baby. Get on with it. Stop moaning. Yes, your instincts tell you to be a child, but you're not allowed to because you only have a cold. And worse still, oh, the cruel irony. Even your attempts to retain your adulthood in the midst of your suffering betrays that sniveling little inner child of yours. Oh, don't worry about me. I'll be all right. No, please. I don't want to sound like a martyr. Well, I'm feeling a little better now, thank you. I'm sorry. But when you've got a cold, you're doomed to be a child adult. Now, clearly, this writer put some thought into that. It's not first draft, but it's a serious attempt for levity. So as a brief writer yourself, Henry, and I've got some more examples which we can share maybe a few minutes from now, but as a brief writer yourself, what's your thoughts on trying to be funny in your briefs?
Well, as we said many times, brief writing is writing. And so to me, it only stands to reason that there are different styles to writing briefs, I think, for different situations. What stood out to me in that description, that target description you just read, more than the humor of it, and it was humorous, was that the humor was appropriate to what I feel like is building up to an insight or to the tone of the brief, which is that when you're sick, you're helpless like a child, or you feel helpless like a child. So he used the humor to further the ambition of the brief, which is to say, because everybody can empathize, but you need to get into that mindset of the last time you were sick, right? Because being sick is something that, like, when you're going through it, it sucks. It's the worst. It's the only thing you can think about. You just feel miserable. But after you get over being sick, you forget how miserable it was. It's like one of those things your mind has, like, it's a way of, like, that's in the past. Forget it. We're never going to get sick like that again. And it's all this optimistic. But it's a good way. Those words kind of bring you back into the mindset you might have had when you were sick before. So I think it really does two things. It does bring humor, which to me is a way of getting attention of the people that just like you use humor in advertising, you have an audience when you write a brief. So using humor is a way to get their attention, get them engaged, get them to lower their guard and accept the message that you're giving them. But in this particular case, I think it's even more brilliant. It's not that it's ha funny, it's humorous, but it's humorous in the way that it advances this idea of when you're sick, you're nothing more than a helpless child, and which is going to lead to some interesting ideation areas, I would imagine.
Yeah, I wish I had some creative from this particular campaign. Unfortunately, I don't. But when I read this, it always gets a chuckle, and there's always this self-recognition. And interestingly enough, it's usually the women who point out that it's the guys who act like babies when they get sick. And it's kind of hard to deny that. Yeah, we do turn into babies. Here's another one, slightly different. This is from a British brief from an agency that has closed its doors. And I've got a little company here who wants to join us for our, she's trying to find a place to lie down. Jersey, you want to listen to this funny? No, she doesn't want to listen, so I'm gonna help her. But the product here is a retail grocery store. It's called Iceland, and it's in the UK. And this is, again, from the Target description. It seems to be a great place to inject a little bit of levity. It says here, because the campaign is addressed mostly to women. It says, think of the typical hardworking, underappreciated mom trying to feed a demanding family on a tight budget. Iceland, which is the name of the grocery store, is a godsend to them with its amazing deals, and the advertising draws them in on a regular basis. However, they either go straight to the deals or look for favorites, rarely taking time to browse and find all the new things Iceland are introducing. They are family and house proud, live vicariously through celebrity gossip magazines and soaps, have a wide network of sassy mom friends. These moms are surprisingly switched on and street smart, and are always looking for something new to make life a bit easier. Their family is everything, kids especially, and it's the needs of the latter that often inform and dictate their needs. You know, this isn't laugh out loud funny, but I think to your point before, it's humorous in the sense of it's insightful about who they're talking to. Any thoughts on this particular approach?
No, I like you said, I don't think that it was, I don't think they set out to get a knee slap reaction, but it's very relatable. Like suddenly you feel like you can relate to this person. It's not you might be a man living in a very cosmopolitan life, very eating out every night, very different from this target, but somehow you can relate to a woman in your life, you know, your own mom or your sister or somebody. And so I think it's a way, again, of, in this case, that your guard goes down and it makes the target more relatable.
I think it also helps to know that adding aspects that display or share empathy for the target makes it easier for us creatives to borrow your phrase, put on the costume of the target audience and really live vicariously, to pick up a word from that description, and try to see the world through their eyes. That, I think, is critically important for any brief writer, and then of course for the creative to see the world.
Absolutely agree.
Okay,
good stuff, Howard.
Good stuff, Henry. All right, Henry, we're back for our creative review, and today I thought we'd take a look at, I guess we call it a short film. This is a 4-minute film from Chevrolet. It broke during the holiday season, so it's a Christmas spot. And this being our first episode in the new year, we're still a little bit into the holiday spirit. Trying to come down from it. I think this spot had a lot of play, and it probably got a lot of talk. Most of us may have seen the 30 or 60. This is the 4-minute version. Let's take a look, and we'll see what we think afterwards.
are you?
Well, it's been hard with Dad these days, and so I was thinking maybe...
Your mom's car.
I mean, you know, she taught me to drive in that car.
You up for a little night work? Don't mind me. Thank you.
It's what Mom would have wanted. You know that.
It's the best Christmas gift I could ever have. You ready?
I'm ready.
Virgo, you ready?
Yeah, he's ready.
Okay, Henry, what are your thoughts?
Well, this one is an interesting one. It popped up on one of my timelines on my phone or somewhere, and I shared it around with my colleagues at the agency. Of course, full disclosure, the Ford Motor Company is the biggest client I work on. And
A little
so,
bit of a competitor, huh?
So yep, it's our closest in competitor is Chevrolet.
Right.
But you have to give credit where credit is due. This is a very well executed short film that brings something to the table that a lot of automotive brands can bring to the table, but very rarely do they, which is nostalgia. Talking about the past, we see what I think is a cliche of a lot of marketers saying, we have to be about the future. We have to be about the future. But understanding that brand a lot of times is built in memory and memory structures, right? As Byron Sharp would say. And so activating warm, nostalgic feelings for a brand is, I think, always a positive. So I don't know if that's my personal bias towards, things that are historical and nostalgic, but if you're a brand like Chevy and you certainly have a long history, I think that it's okay to activate nostalgia like this, and they did it in a very touching and compelling way, telling this story of this man who lost his wife, and all the memories that he had kind of tied up in this vehicle, that was her vehicle. I mean, we can fill in some of the gaps in the story ourselves. Like maybe he bought this vehicle for her. This is the way that he remembers her and remembers himself in his youth and her and together in their youth. And then, of course, the daughter plays an integral part in terms of, and the other thing, as a car guy myself who owns a vintage car, a 60-year-old car, is that community aspect of it, right? Like she goes to it's a small town. There's some people that are into collector cars, and she knows who's going to be able to help her, and they're all willing to do it. Not only probably because their father's a great guy, but because this is what they like to do. They like to work on cars, and it's that there's that aspect of it too. And I think that for a brand like Chevy, it's good. I mean, when you're it's not that their cars aren't technologically advanced. I mean, they spend a lot of their rest of their campaign talking about how their cars are great and technologically advanced. But you get something from a brand like this that you don't get from a brand like a Tesla, right? That doesn't have history, it's all about space age, futuristic, blah, blah, blah. And maybe some year when we're like in flying cars in 30 years, if ever, we'll look back at Tesla and be nostalgic about the Model 3, though I doubt it.
I doubt it.
But I think all in, one of my colleagues responded to the email and said, I wish we had done this. And it's one of those things. I will say, though, Ford has done a nice job in the last 3 years. My client has done a nice job of walking that balance between talking about the heritage of the brand and how that positions Ford to be a great brand moving forward, and what was great about Ford in the past that is great about Ford now and will be in the future. So the question for me with this Chevy spot is it just a one-off, or is it sign of things to come about them kind of embracing that heritage in a way at certain times, and the holiday is obviously a great time to do it.
I agree. In fact, the harking back aspect of this spot works perfectly in the Christmas season, because that's what we do. We look back on our childhoods or previous experiences during the holidays, good and often not good. But that to me, I think worked really well. And now I'm old enough to remember the original campaigns in the 60s for Chevrolet. See the USA in your Chevrolet, that tune that, it stayed with me for decades because it worked. It's memorable. And
baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet.
Chevrolet, right. And, my grandparents drove Chevrolets. I think we had a Chevrolet growing up. I've never had one, but I've always had fond memories of the Chevrolet. As I was telling you before we started recording, the first time I saw this spot, which I think was the short 30-second or 60-second, I forget which, I kind of came into it maybe 10, 15, 20 seconds into the spot. So I missed much of what was going on, and I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at. But one thing I did notice right away was the car was prominent in the spot, even when we didn't know what the spot was about. And, the storytelling aspect of this is a slow unfolding of this situation. The man walks out to actually it's a barn because he's kind of out west, where he stores this car. It's no longer in great condition. And as soon as you see the car, you say, oh, that's an old Chevrolet. I don't remember the exact, model, but I could see it was a Chevrolet. So that worked. I had to come back and see it again before I figured out what was going on. And then I saw this long, short film, the 4-minute version, which we just looked at, and it filled in a few gaps. But again, it's about tapping into something that we've known for a long time about Chevrolet, even if we never bought a Chevrolet, even if we never owned it. It's part of American culture. It's embedded into what we think about this country. So I too, I give my hats off to it. It's a great spot. I think you have a really interesting question. Is this a one-off, or are we going to see something else? We'll have to wait and see on that one.
Yeah. To me, it's interesting that you mentioned that Americana aspect of it, because that is a territory that we're seeing. Ford did with its Built Ford Proud and Built for America, starting in 2019, started kind of more openly embracing this idea of Americana and America, and having kind of a seat at the table on all of these discussions. I'm privy to what's going on, but other brands like Jeep and now Chevrolet are also jumping in. And I think that, there's an unspoken thing that's going on here and this is a completely different topic area, but it's the battle for the identity of the country. Is this a good and great country that where the American dream is still alive, and you see pieces like this that say, if you believe that it's a good and just country and the American dream is still alive, then we're a brand for you, because we give you these warm and fuzzies thinking about America. So it's a very, very, to me, very interesting and fascinating, given the direction that a lot of brands are going in, which is a completely different direction, right?
Right.
Trying to appeal to the sentiment of young people today, the idea that there's no social justice in the world. And so this doesn't directly attack that, but it kind of is putting plant a stake in the ground and saying, we're an American brand. America's good. You can feel good and proud buying a Chevrolet or a Ford or a Jeep.
Yeah, I think it's worth thinking about this, further down the line into 2022, and keeping an eye on the brand and what they're doing in their marketing and advertising. And maybe we'll come back to this, because that's a great point. But good stuff, Henry.
Good stuff, Howard.
He's Henry Gomez.
And he's Howard Eibach. And together, we're the Brief Brothers. Till next time, bye-bye.